Wall Street banks process trillions of dollars every day, but some of that money hides the darkest secrets imaginable.
Yeah, they really do. And the paper trail is finally catching up to the big institutions that basically just look the other way.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We got a wild one for you today. Right now, the financial and legal worlds are just completely shaking. The U.S. Justice Department just dropped over 3 million pages of documents detailing the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein.
3 million pages.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a massive dump of information.
Right, and at the exact same time, you have these massive financial institutions paying millions in penalties. Deutsche Bank just paid a $150 million fine.
Yep.
Bank of America agreed to a $72.5 million settlement. Why? Because they ignored glaring red flags and processed hundreds of millions of dollars that, fueled a sex trafficking empire.
Exactly. Because, look, you cannot operate a sprawling international criminal network out of a shoebox of cash. You just can't.
No, of course not. You need the global banking system.
Right. You need massive institutions to process wire transfers, clear the checks, and manage payroll. And what these newly released documents show is that banks didn't just accidentally miss what was happening. They actively twisted their own rules to keep the money flowing.
Our mission for you today in this deep dive is to follow the money. We're going to show you exactly how global banks failed to stop this, how a convicted criminal acted as a shadow broker for the ultra-rich, and what the newly released government files reveal about the two-tiered justice system that let it happen.
And to really understand how a criminal network survives, you first have to look at where it keeps its money.
Right. And we have to start with Deutsche Bank, because they actively turned off their own warning bells. In 2020, New York regulators fined them that $150 million. But what's crazy is they failed to properly screen huge amounts of money across the board.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just Epstein.
Right. They missed $267 billion from Danske Estonia. And get this, $150 billion of that was tied directly to Russia. So we are looking at a bank that already had a huge blind spot for suspicious money.
Well, you have to understand the bank's culture at the time. They were just, hungry for high net worth liquidity.
Yeah.
So back in 2013, a private banker actually pitched Jeffrey Epstein as a client to Deutsche Bank.
Even though he was already convicted.
Exactly. The banker writes this internal memo estimating Epstein will bring in up to $4 million a year in revenue for the bank. But, like you said, he pleaded guilty to sex crimes in 2008. His crimes were completely public.
Any basic software would flag that immediately.
Right. Standard banking software would block the account creation instantly. But they wanted the money. So they actually classified him as an honorary PP.
Oh, wait, I need to stop you. The documents say they made him an honorary PP. Explain what that actually means.
So PEP stands for politically exposed person. In the banking world, a PP designation is a massive red flag. You put that label on government officials or military generals because they are at a super high risk for bribery.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it forces the bank's compliance software to apply the highest level of security to every single dollar that moves through the account.
Wait, so they took a warning label meant to trigger high security, and they basically used it as a VIP lounge pass to bypass the normal rules.
That is exactly what they did. They stamped him as an honorary PP to justify why a convicted criminal was moving millions of dollars. They used a risk warning label to just wave him right through the front door.
That is insane. And they opened at least 40 accounts for him and his associates.
40 accounts, yep.
And once he was inside, the red flags just kept waving. Bank staff literally watched Epstein's lawyer withdraw $800,000 in cash over several years.
Yeah, just taking it right out.
And the lawyer didn't even try to hide it. He specifically asked a bank teller how to avoid the $10,000 reporting limit. He then started breaking up his cash withdrawals into smaller chunks to stay under the radar.
Right. In the banking world, that practice is called structuring. By law, any cash transaction over $10,000 triggers a currency transaction report.
And that goes straight to the feds, right?
Exactly. The bank has to send that straight to the federal government. So structuring your withdrawals to avoid that report is a federal crime in itself. It's exactly what drug cartels do.
So the bank software definitely flagged these repeated $8,000 withdrawals.
It absolutely did. But human beings at the bank manually overrode the software.
So the bank saw a convicted criminal's lawyer structuring cash withdrawals to avoid the law right at the teller window, and they just look the other way. That is like a home security system that happily turns itself off just because the burglar promises to pay the electric bill.
That's the perfect way to explain it. They traded their legal compliance rules for $4 million a year in revenue.
So, Deutsche Bank, looking the other way, explains how he funded his day-to-day operations, paying off recruiters in cash. But the sources show Epstein's power went way beyond just holding money in personal accounts.
Oh, way beyond. He actually acted as a high-level financial broker for other billionaires. And that drags other massive institutions into the spotlight.
Like Bank of America. They recently agreed to a $72.5 million settlement with his victims, and the lawsuit showed the bank processed $170 million in massive wire transfers from billionaire Leon Black directly to Epstein.
$170 million. And the stated reason for moving all that money was tax and estate planning advice.
Wait, let's just unpack this. $170 million for tax advice. What kind of tax advice costs 9 figures? Did the bank's compliance team actually buy that excuse?
Well, they pretended to buy it. And the way the money moved is really the key here. Those transfers often moved in $10 million chunks.
$10 million at a time. Wow.
Right. When you move $10 million between ultra-wealthy corporate accounts, it actually bypasses a lot of the lower-level software alerts. It just looks like standard corporate ledger balancing. It blends into the daily trillions that Wall Street processes.
But nobody pays $170 million just for tax advice.
No, they don't. Epstein was running a shadow brokerage. He was moving massive amounts of capital for the ultra-wealthy, entirely outside the bounds of regular regulated finance.
And he brokered deals for the ultra-wealthy, too. In 2015, the Edmond de Rothschild Bank faced a $45 million fine from the U.S. Department of Justice. They got caught helping wealthy Americans hide assets offshore.
Right. It was a massive international scandal for the Rothschild family. And guess who swoops in to handle the crisis? Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein stepped in to help the Rothschild family settle the investigation. And for his services, he secured a staggering $25 million fee, paid to his Virgin Islands company, Southern Trust Company.
It's just wild.
Wait, I really need to push back on this timeline. Epstein pleaded guilty to sex crimes in 2008. How does a convicted offender get hired in 2015 to negotiate with the U.S. Department of Justice on behalf of a major European banking dynasty?
I know, it makes no sense to normal people. But it reveals exactly how leverage operates behind closed doors. At that level of wealth, elite families do not care about a person's criminal record. They just care about making the problem go away.
And Epstein had the connections to do that.
Oh, absolutely. He spent decades cultivating relationships with prosecutors, politicians, and regulators. He knew how the DOJ bureaucracy worked. He actually sent an email bragging that keeping the Rothschilds' total penalty below $80 million was quite a bargain.
Unbelievable. Which brings us to the 3-million-page paper trail that just got dumped. Because if Epstein is confidently negotiating with the DOJ in 2015, you have to ask, what did the government actually know about his crimes?
They knew almost everything. The Justice Department just released over 3 million pages of files, and it unearths some really shocking missed opportunities.
Missed opportunities is putting it lightly. In 2007, a federal prosecutor drafted a 56-page indictment against him with 30 criminal counts.
30 counts. Let that sink in.
Right. A 56-page indictment means FBI agents and prosecutors spent months gathering evidence. The government had the entire operation mapped out in 2007.
But they never filed it. The government never filed that indictment. They opted for a highly criticized state plea deal instead, giving him basically a slap on the wrist.
And then, in 2010, the DEA launched a secret investigation into Epstein and 14 others. They were actively tracking illegal wire transfers tied to drugs and prostitution.
Right. They were watching the money move in real time.
So if the DEA was actively tracking illegal wire transfers back in 2010, and prosecutors drafted a 30-count indictment in 2007, why did the system wait until 2019 to finally arrest him?
Because there is a two-tier justice system. The documents reveal a deliberate pattern of hesitation by the people meant to enforce the law. Federal agents would write memos, send them up the chain of command, and then the investigations would just stall out.
Bureaucratic paralysis.
Completely. Leadership simply did not want to pull the trigger on a man who managed money for the global elite.
And that bureaucracy is still failing today. The document release itself is a total disaster. The government employed over 500 reviewers to redact sensitive information.
Yeah, 500 people. And what did they do?
While the government successfully protected the names of powerful political and financial figures, lawyers say the DOJ completely failed to black out the names and images of multiple victims.
It is a catastrophic failure. They caused the victims further harm by exposing them, all while the bureaucratic machine ensures that the powerful people stay anonymous.
It makes you so angry to read, and it brings this whole thing back to you, the listener. Why should you care about dry banking compliance laws? Because when banks fail to flag suspicious funds, real people suffer.
Exactly. Without access to the global financial system, this network would have collapsed in months. He needed Deutsche Bank to pay his recruiters. He needed Bank of America to process Leon Black's money.
The banks were the engine. Money is the oxygen that allows these criminal networks to breathe. And now the fallout is entirely financial. Epstein's estate paid $121 million to 136 victims.
And his personal lawyer and accountant are settling a class action for another $35 million. The institutions are finally paying penalties in the 2020s for crimes that were fully operational in the early 2000s.
Which leaves us with a really chilling final thought for you to mull over. If one man could use his connections to manipulate the global banking system and shield a criminal empire for decades,
Right.
how many other shadow brokers are currently moving millions through those exact same banks today without anyone noticing?